So what if I told you that you can change your future by changing your past? If you're like most people, you would probably look at me like I just grew 2 extra heads. But I'm here to tell you today that yes, as crazy as it sounds, you can in fact change your future by changing your past. And that's why for today's video, we are going to go over some revision success stories. Because number one, who doesn't love a good success story video? But number two, I truly hope that this brings some inspiration and motivation to all of you to give this a try. So if you are interested in learning more about revision, if you are curious to see how this all works, or you just want to see some really cool success stories, then stick around because today we are going to dive into revision success. By the way, hi, I'm Missy Renee. And on this channel, we talk all things manifestation and the law of assumption. So if that is a topic that you want to learn more about, then definitely be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for notification. And if you enjoy my videos, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you are interested in any of my resources, such as my coaching programs, my workshops, or masterclasses, I've got all that information down below in the description box. So don't forget to check it out. If you are somebody that has been watching this channel for a while, you have probably heard me talk about revision before. The way that revision has changed my life could be a several-part series video in and of itself. And the thing that a lot of people struggle with when it comes to revision is the fact that it's really daunting, the idea of going back to an old memory that was not ideal. It can create a whole lot of resistance, it can give us hesitation, we certainly don't want to go there, and I get it. I completely get it. So my aim with this video is to help give you some boost, to give you some motivation, some inspiration, to give you the courage and inspiration to apply this to yourself. So without further ado, let's get into some success stories. My story is one that I feel many people will relate to, especially if you are on an SB journey. I found the law of assumption the same way I imagine most people find it, completely by accident while going through one of the lowest points of my life. I had recently broken up with my person after nearly 4 years together, and admittedly, I was desperate to get him back. At first, my logical brain wanted to dismiss the law entirely, but something deeper encouraged me to learn more. Needless to say, I am so thankful I listened to that quieter, deeper voice within me. In the first few weeks, I spent most of my free time absorbing content. Intellectually, everything started to make sense. However, when I went to put everything into practice, be doers, as Neville said, I would always find myself struggling to apply the techniques. I couldn't imagine in a way that felt natural and relaxing. Anytime I did have a breakthrough, the backlash was swift and unmerciful. It felt like I was going in circles. No matter what I did, I felt stagnant, and I'd always wind up frustrated with myself for not making progress. One Saturday evening, I stumbled across Missy's video on revision, and to say I was baffled would be an understatement. My brain didn't want to believe it. Admittedly, I quickly dismissed the idea and went back to binging content and struggling to apply what I learned. This went on for a couple of weeks until I woke up one morning with a crazy realization. It dawned on me that I was overlooking the most important aspect of revision, that revising my past would help me create a better self-concept in the now. I realized that it would be easier for me to believe that I am X, successful, satisfied, loved, etc., if I had always been X. So I decided to give it a try. I told myself it certainly couldn't hurt, and at the very least, it would help me to feel better. I really had nothing to lose. I dove into as many revision success stories as I could find. I read through Neville's lecture, The Printing Shears of Revision, more times than I could count. Feeling motivated one afternoon, I decided to sit down and write a new story of my whole life. I wanted to change the script entirely. Starting from childhood, I started changing all of the circumstances and how I reacted to them. I changed my relationship with my parents and how I saw their relationship with each other. I changed other people's behavior towards me. I changed the choices I made. All of the things that conditioned my self-concept, I changed them to align with the very best version of myself. Writing and reading my new stories felt really, really good, which was my goal. Changing my feelings about myself and my past. Some days were so cathartic that all I could do was cry, but even those days were a blessing because I always felt a heavy weight off of my shoulders. At first, the change was subtle. I noticed an improvement in how I felt, but nothing seemingly different in the physical world. That said, the changes I noticed internally were huge. Overall, my anxiety plummeted. I walked with my head higher and with more of a spring in my step. The intrusive thoughts quieted and I became practically non-existent. But most importantly, my imaginal acts took off. I noticed any resistance I formerly had to my imaginal scenes had dissipated. I was imagining deeply, without pushback, and it felt incredible. In no time, I noticed the changes appearing in the 3D. Again, it was subtle. Everyone around me became much more pleasant and kind to me. From family to strangers, I was receiving warm feedback in the form of compliments and overall kindness. My relationships improved drastically. My mother, who I was partially estranged with, started reaching out to me more in what appeared to be an attempt to mend our relationship. Much of the things that I had revised around my childhood were my interactions with my parents, and especially my mother. In the new, revised story, we had always been close, and she had been supportive and proud of me growing up. Today, we talk almost daily, and we're closer than we've ever been. In this revised timeline, she is encouraging, supportive, and loving, exactly as I had rewritten her in my script. To be honest, I felt so good and was enjoying life so thoroughly that I almost completely forgot about my SP. That is, until one Tuesday evening when he called me out of the blue. We ended up talking for hours, and he proceeded to tell me all of the things that I had imagined verbatim. We're engaged now, and set to be married next spring. Today, I can say that I feel like a completely different person. My world has changed drastically, both inside and out, in every area of my life, and I know without question I have Revision to thank for all of it. My intention to anyone who hears this story is to inspire you to give it a try. Even if it's just to imagine an alternate timeline purely for the sake of feeling better, you genuinely have nothing to lose and everything to gain. I've never done revision because I honestly didn't see the point. Then, a couple of weeks ago, I started coaching with Missy, and one of the first things she asked me to do was revision. So I gave it a shot, and oh boy, it's just amazing. I had so much guilt because of past events, and it all just disappeared within a few days. I even started revising my days now because it just feels so good. Listen to Missy, you guys. She knows what she's talking about. Revision has always been a fuzzy concept to me, and I've never been able to wrap my brain around it or fully believe or embrace it until now. I am hoping that sharing my experience may help provide clarity to somebody else who may still be trying to piece the idea of it all together. My journey with revision really started after one night when I had a huge fallout with my girlfriend. This wasn't one of those petty squabbles that you dismiss and make up the next day. This was the kind of fight that ends relationships, and for a while there, I was absolutely sure it did. After the fallout, I was in my room, utterly seething, when a thought struck me like lightning. I need to revise this. I could hear Neville's words in his own voice. So I asked everyone here to practice revision. Revise the past. I don't care what it is, revise it, and the past will conform to your dream of what it ought to have been, and suddenly it will appear before you. I could feel my boiling anger begin to dissipate as his words played in my head on a loop. I closed my eyes and started taking slow, deep breaths. Revise the past. Once relaxed, I imagined the same scene I had lived just moments earlier, but instead of screaming and yelling, we were talking and laughing as though nothing had happened. I had attempted revision before, but it never felt anything close to this. The waves of relief that came over me were indescribable. I could feel a smile spreading across my face, as I played through the conversation again in my imagination before falling asleep. The next morning, I woke up to a feeling of peace. Though I could recall the fight from the night prior, it felt so foggy and off-center. It didn't feel right. I did a quick mental inventory and found there wasn't a shred of anger or dread in my body. Around noon that day, I was on my lunch break when my girlfriend called. For a split second, I wondered if she was going to bring up a conversation from the day before. Funny enough, the thought didn't leave me anxious at all. It was more of a curiosity than a fear. I picked up the phone to my girlfriend's excited greeting. We chatted for a second before I interjected with an apology for the night before. A pause. "What are you talking about? Did something happen last night?" I was stunned. She had no recollection of the fight from the night before. That was my first major success with revision, but it certainly wasn't my last. I've seen it rearrange my world enough times to know without question this is real. You really and truly can change the past. Guys, I am serious as a heart attack when I say not to sleep on revision. When you learn to change your past, the future is yours however you see fit. So I used to believe that revision doesn't actually change the past, but I revised something just to feel better about myself. I went to sleep imagining the outcome that I wanted. To my surprise, I met a person who was involved in the situation that I revised, and he actually had no memory of what I did in that event. I was dumbfounded. Now, I know that revision does change the past because imagination creates reality. It's incredible. I had a little success story with revision today. In the morning, I burned my fingers with hot steam. I was deep in my thoughts, and for whatever reason, I took the lid off the kettle, and since my hand was really close, the hot steam burned. The pain was bad. To be honest, I have never felt such pain. Despite the pain, I sat down, closed my eyes, and imagined that I was in the kitchen, grabbed the kettle handle, poured water into my cup, put the kettle back, and nothing happened. When I opened my eyes, my fingers were still red and swollen, but now, in the evening, they looked normal as if nothing happened. And the pain is also gone. I didn't put any cream on it either. All I did was revise the incident. I love revision. This is a success story about the power of our imagination and how truly limitless we are. This is a success story about not accepting the past outcome, but choosing your preference instead. My intention is to help you transcend your limitations and trust in yourself as the operant power. First, a bit of backstory. The last few years were some of the hardest in my life. The COVID lockdowns greatly impacted my small business, and despite my best efforts to get assistance, I ended up losing my home and having to move into a spare bedroom at my friend's house. Needless to say, it was quite the downgrade, so most of my stuff ended up in a storage unit I rented in town. Due to a communication/payment mix-up, I became severely delinquent on the payments for my storage unit. I wasn't even aware of how far behind I fell until one day I received a letter in the mail informing me that all my possessions had been sold at auction. This news was like a blow to the chest. Granted, most of the things in my storage were miscellaneous items that could ultimately be replaced, but the one most important thing of sentimental value was my late mother's jewelry. I contacted the storage company and pleaded through tears to get those items back. I didn't care about anything else, I said, but that jewelry was priceless. It was one of the only things I still had from my mother. The lady I spoke to from the office was incredibly rude and indifferent, and basically told me it was too late. The unit and everything in it had already been sold. I hung up the phone and just sobbed. I felt a burning shame unlike anything I'd felt before. My mother and I were very, very close, and the jewelry was the only thing I had of hers after she unexpectedly passed 4 years prior. In that moment, I had never felt so gutted and hopeless in my entire life. Fast forward a year or so, when I stumbled onto the law of assumption. I quickly became fascinated by the concept and started binging all the content I could get my hands on. One Saturday evening, I stumbled across Missy's video on revision. And to say I was perplexed would be an understatement. Change the past? What a wild idea. My brain didn't want to believe it, but I felt a strong push to learn more about this concept. I read Neville's lecture on the pruning shears of revision at least a dozen times until I knew the only way to be sure of this concept was to test it. I was brainstorming ideas to test revision when the thought of my mom's jewelry crossed my mind. My brain immediately tried to reject it. There was no way I'd be getting anything from that unit back over a year later. I went back and forth with the idea for a minute and closed my eyes. I felt sadness well up in my chest. What is the end result I want? How do I want to feel? An image of the jewelry box entered my mind's eye. I saw it atop a shelf in my bedroom, with all of the details I could remember. I felt a peace begin to spread through my chest, throughout my body. Thank God I got my jewelry back. It was only a moment that I imagined, and honestly, I wasn't trying to manifest anything. I didn't fully believe it either. I just wanted to feel some relief. I quickly forgot about it and went on with my day. A month or so later, I was scrolling through Facebook when I noticed a message request. I was curious. I didn't recognize this person, and we did not have any mutual friends. I accepted the request and skimmed through her message when my jaw dropped. The woman, we'll call her Michelle, had reached out because she was looking for me, specifically, and asked if I was previous owner of a jewelry box that had recently come into her possession. I was in shock. Shaking, I accepted her message and we began a conversation. Michelle explained that she had just purchased a jewelry box from a local antique shop. After she got home, she was examining the box closer when she found a note that had been hidden away in a bottom compartment. The note was written to me by my mother, one of the last notes she wrote to me before she passed. Michelle went on to explain that once she found that note, she knew she had to do the right thing and try to find me to make sure this jewelry box didn't wind up in her hands by mistake. It seemed like this would be a priceless possession to whoever owned this, so I had to try and find you. Michelle lived in a town about 20 minutes from where I live, so we made plans to meet the next day so I could get my mom's jewelry back. We chatted for a bit longer before I thanked her profusely, wished her a good night, and set my phone down. I couldn't help the tears that started flowing. I was sitting for a moment in complete disbelief when it struck me. I had revised this. I was on the bridge of incidents. Since then, my faith in the law has only grown. The odds of me getting my mom's belongings back were 1,000,000,000 to 1, and yet it unfolded perfectly. My aim with this story is to encourage everyone listening to try revision. Just test it. Don't let the past define you. Trust me when I say you don't have to be perfect at this. Practice it until you start to see results. The more you practice with revision, the more you will start to feel the meaning of time being an illusion, and tend to have experiences that prove to you that time is just an illusion. The more you do this, the more you will feel the meaning of creation is finished. Since I started practicing revision, I have been able to live in the moment and go with the flow of things, knowing it's all unfolding perfectly for me and my desires. There truly is no past or future, only this beautiful moment that is the present. And in this moment, you can have anything you want. So those incredible stories are just a few of many, many successes that I have heard and I have encountered through the years of knowing, learning, and applying the law. Because my aim here is the same as always. I want to give you guys the tools, clarity, and inspiration to put this into practice yourself. I know firsthand how daunting it can feel at the idea of revisiting a painful event of the past. There can be a lot of resistance around trying this technique, and for good reason, and it's completely understandable. But what I can say to all of you is that if I could point to one thing that drastically changed my life, it would be revision. To be able to go back into the memory, rewrite it, and begin to live from that new premise, from that new concept of self, is the most empowering feeling that there is. So my hope and aim for each and every one of you is to not overlook this amazing technique. Even Neville Goddard said it himself, and here's a quote from him to wrap this up. "We cannot leave behind us the mistakes of our past, for nothing disappears. Everything that has been is still in existence. The past still exists, and it gives and still gives its results. Man must go back in memory, seek for and destroy the causes of evil, however far back they lie. This going into the past and replaying a scene of the past in imagination as it ought to have been played the first time, I call revision. And revision results in a repeal. Changing our lives means changing the past. The causes of the present evil are the unrevised scenes of the past. The past and the present form the whole structure of man. It is carrying all of its contents with it. Any alteration of content will result in an alteration in the present and future. Live nobly, so that mind can restore a past well worthy of recall. Should you fail to do so, remember, the first act of correction or cure is always revise. If the past is recreated into the present, so will the revised past be recreated into the present. And on that note, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope you found it inspiring. I hope you liked it. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you're interested in checking out any of my other resources, I have links down below to my coaching programs, my workshops, my blog, my podcast, my social channels. Got a ton of resources down in that description box below, so don't forget to check it out. Also, be sure to check out the other videos on this channel. Be sure to check out my Manifestation Fundamentals playlist. Each video is a different topic, but it all pertains to how to manifest the best life ever. So until we meet again, you guys, as always, please take care, be well, and never forget that when you change your past, you will change your future. Happy manifesting, guys.